Thank you all for joining today. We are going to be talking about all things sales efficiency, how to improve efficiency on your sales team without firing salespeople. This is the topic of the day. And we are joined with two lovely sales leaders from the SaaS world who I'm very excited to introduce and talk with over the next 30 or 40 minutes. So let's kick off with some introductions. First, I'm your host for today. I am Ashley. I run the marketing team here at HyperComply, and I'm excited to be joined by Allie Newman, the sales manager over at Vidyard, as well as Ryan Frampton, our head of sales here at HyperComply. Allie, why don't you kick things off? Give us a little bit of background. How did you get into the sales world, and what's your role like at Vidyard right now?
Yeah, thanks for the intro. I froze for a moment as soon as we went live, so I'm glad my internet kicked back in. But yeah, I'm Allie Newman. I'm a sales manager over at Vidyard on the emerging side. So I lead a team that we sell to companies 0 to 50 employees. I got into sales in general because I didn't know what to do after graduating, and I just knew I wanted to live a certain lifestyle and not have to be a bartender or a server and work normal hours, and actually learn and set myself up for a career, whatever that it was or is. So naturally I went the sales route. And I got into SaaS because I used to work for an outbound BDR agency called the Sales Developers, and we worked with a lot of SaaS organizations. Vidyard was actually we were a referral partner, and we use Vidyard a lot in our processes. So after about a year or so, I wanted to go into the SaaS space, and due to being let go during COVID in March 2020, I got hired at Vidyard in June 2020, eventually under Ryan Frampton, who was a previous sales manager here at Vidyard. So everything I know is because of Ryan. So this will be a very, very fun webinar and conversation here.
No pressure, Ryan. All right. And Ryan, with that, tell us, what is your background? How did you get into the sales world, and what's HyperComply all about?
Yeah, so mine's actually kind of funny. I always told my parents that I would never get like a job, like a normal job. I wanted to be a business owner, etc. So I read the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Has anybody heard of that book? And decided to launch a marketing company in university, and then moved to Thailand. That quickly did not work out. I got fired by all of my clients and had to move back home and get a real job and start breaking into my career. And I thought I was really good at selling because I got those clients somehow. I just wasn't good at marketing. So might as well get into tech sales. So that's what really brought me into my career, and loved it ever since. I haven't looked back.
Amazing. I aspire to have the level of gumption that it would take to move to Thailand and attempt to run a marketing agency abroad. So, applaud the effort, but I'm glad you found your way here. And both of you have super interesting backgrounds, and I'm curious how that shows up in your day-to-day. I'd love to hear a little bit about how each of you think about running a sales team and being part of a sales organization. What are some of your objectives in managing your teams day-to-day? Maybe Allie, do you want to kick it off? How do you think about managing your team?
Yeah, I am a newer manager, so I'm still figuring a lot of this stuff out, but this is actually something I got from Ryan. It's like I have had a successful day if I've helped someone, or if I helped someone move a deal to a certain stage, whether that's the next stage in the sales process or we've taken them out. I really try to be a people leader first versus like just a sales leader, especially just with everything going on, and in sales, you're naturally more in a stressful role. I just want my team to feel like safe and happy. And sorry, I'm getting my gutters replaced if you hear any noise. Safe and happy and supported, because that does lead to their overall performance, their comfortability coming to me with help. So I really just look at it as a people perspective, and just things that I was able to get from Ryan when he managed me as well. Just want to pass that along to my team, and ultimately I want them to succeed. That will eventually lead to my success as well. So I always put them and their compensation first, much over mine.
Awesome. And what about you, Ryan? How do you think about managing your team? What's top of mind for you?
Yeah, I think there's so much that you can think of, right? Like it's very hard to balance the priorities. I think when it comes down to it is, especially in a sales environment, you're trying to drive people's personal lives, right? In whichever way that they are driving towards, right? And you should never diagnose that. I've had people that we've worked with that have opened rock climbing gyms, that have started their own COVID mask businesses, things like that. Like people go on and do many different things. They continue in sales. So I think my number one priority as a leader is understanding like what someone wants to drive towards personally. And sometimes that can take a while for them to feel comfortable and open to be like, to tell you that stuff, especially when it's not like, hey, I want to get an AE promotion, or hey, I want to do X at HyperComply or at Vidyard. So that's really my first priority, because that's where a lot of folks' motivation lies. And that's where I also get a lot of my satisfaction as a leader, rather than just hitting a revenue target. That can be a really good thing to care about, or a really bad thing to care about, depending on the month. In sales, we're naturally in like a losing game. A best-in-class close rate is 30%, which means you're losing 70% of the time. And best-in-class response rate is 4%, which means, again, you're losing 96% of the time. So focusing on the things that are outside of your job that are wins that you can work towards with your team. And then I think as a business level, then you're setting a strategy and a vision, and letting everybody know that like, hey, I don't have all the answers. Like we're going to need to do this together. That's how I think about leading the sales org.
Excellent. I think you transition nicely to my next question, Ryan, which is about how sales teams are adapting right now. You said that, sales folks naturally tend to be in a losing business, which is an interesting way of looking at it. I think the market, especially over the last several months, has gotten even harder, and sales teams are climbing an even steeper mountain, trying to claw every win they can find. So I'm curious to hear how the current market is impacting your businesses, your teams, individuals, and just what are you seeing day to day that's changed from how things were 6 months ago or a year ago even?
Yeah, I think the priorities have just shifted, right? I think the priorities like maybe 6 months ago was growth, and at whatever cost. Now it's more about, hey, we need to still grow, but we need to do it in an efficient way. And no matter what you're selling, it's impacted by that priority shift, because that priority shift is happening at the C level, which means the decisions that are actually being made and where budget's being allocated will be affected by that. Again, regardless of if you're selling a sales tool, a customer success tool, an internal communications tool, all of it will now be looked at through that lens. And what I think a lot of us fail to do sometimes is shift at the same speed that our environment is shifting at, and specifically from a value proposition perspective. What we were selling, quote unquote, the dream that we were selling 6 months ago is no longer the dream that we need to be selling now. And I think we need to understand when our reality is shifting and adapt with it. I think that's mostly what I've seen, is just the shift from growth. How can we drive more opportunities? How can we do X to speed up sales cycles, to now, okay, how can we do everything that we're doing, but just more efficiently? And when we change our messaging, we're more in tune with how the decision makers that we're trying to convince that we can provide value to them, that we can.
Awesome. I'm curious, Allie, are you seeing similar trends in your role? I know you said you're a newer manager, but you've been in sales for a while. Have you felt the same shift in kind of urgency and needing to retune your value props over the last several months? Or are you seeing different trends?
I would say yes and no, because the team I manage, and it was a similar segment to what I sold to, they're smaller organizations. So despite what the market is like, they're still trying to grow. They're still getting off the ground, and they're looking for those like efficient tools that will help them. And luckily, Vidyard, we do integrate with a lot of tech stacks. So as they grow, I'm sorry if you can hear the cutters a lot. As they grow, we complement their goals quite nicely. Folks are a little more apprehensive because we are more expensive than other video solutions out there because of the ROI that we drive. So that what we're doing is just making sure we don't only have a alignment with our champion, but with other decision makers, CEO, the board, and making sure, like, is this problem that you're looking to solve a priority for everyone involved, or is it just a priority for you? Making sure the business is on board with everything before just leaning on our champion.
Interesting. What does that mean for your team to drive that executive alignment? How are they getting to that point?
We're basically asking at the beginning of our calls, typically before we'd ask at the end, like, who else needs to be involved? What do they care about? And then towards the end is, why wouldn't your team want to approve this? Is this something that the board knows that you're evaluating, or is this something that'll be brand new to them? And then because we use video, we use our solution, all the answers that they give us, we can use video to help combat that, and even like give our champion quick talking points in our follow-up on how they can overcome internal objections as well. So a lot of project management essentially within our follow-ups and reoccurring meetings.
Interesting. I think to a lot of folks that on the surface might sound like more tasks and more work for the sales team, but have you seen that doing that kind of project management and investing in building those relationships through video makes deals more efficient overall?
Yeah, because we just give them the talking points quite simply, and most conversations are the same depending on the persona. So the sales reps can create like their snippets and their templates and just revamp some things depending on what the priorities of the person was. So it definitely helps with the efficiency. Like, don't get me wrong, we do have some deals stalled because of budget freezes. But as of the last 2 months, not as much as we had seen in May versus like June and July.
I'm curious for those deals that get stalled, because I think so many companies are facing that right now, that even with best intentions, it just is really tough to push those forward. Is there anything creative that your team is testing out or experimenting with to help unblock those deals?
Help with budget freezes, that one's tough. There's not much that you can do, but really just being intentful with our nurturing. So sending a video or even sending like a gift, like, I know there's a budget, like just making not a joke, but like relating the gift to whatever you chatted about in your meetings. Something, because folks are cutting budget in general, like travel budget, you can use like a solution to combat that, to keep. So if I'm a sales rep who typically travels, but now my travel budget's cut, I can still use video to reach out to who I need to reach out to and work my deals as I should. So we're testing out that sort of positioning when we run into those scenarios. In the segment I manage, it doesn't come up that much because they're smaller teams, but in the larger segment sizes, so from like 300 plus employees, typically have folks who travel more. So they're working out that positioning a little bit more than I am.
Great. I'm curious, Ryan, are you testing similar tactics on your team at HyperComply? Are you experimenting with different things? What do you have in motion right now?
Yeah, I think when we look at budget freezes, a lot of it is happening, and I think similar timelines to what Ali's describing. And there's two types of budget freezes. There's hard budget freezes that they're not going to move. And I think there you need to shift your gears once you have that understanding, and don't be afraid to ask those questions. If someone's saying, hey, we weren't able to get a budget, plainly ask, like, hey, like, has something changed internally around how you're doing budgeting? Are you on a freeze due to the economic times? A lot of people are shy to ask that. It's better to ask that question and get full alignment, because then you can start understanding where you stand and what you need to do with that opportunity. One, it might be nurturing them in a different way. Providing gifts is a great idea. One thing that we've done with some companies that are a little bit more just cautiously spending rather than on a full budget freeze is suggest to them to start with a pilot with us and present a more solid business case. So we're slowing down the deals, but we've actually been able to win back 2 deals last month that were originally on a budget freeze just a couple of months ago. Just by, again, being more patient, working with them on their needs, providing a more digestible package to start with that has a lot of proof point. It's hard fact. It's like, if you buy this, it will do X because we've proved it to you, can really be beneficial. And a lot of times, especially with HyperComply as a business, they're evaluating whether to hire someone or to enable with software. So we've actually seen some positive effects because of that, where, hey, I had budget to go hire a security analyst for $120,000 a year. That's gone. So I need to solve this problem still because we're still getting these questionnaires. So we've been able to shift some of our business cases to be more aligned to that specific situation that our customers are coming up against. And then one of the other things that we're experimenting with, because really what drives a lack of efficiency in a sales org is AE utilization not being used up. So you have a bunch of headcount that doesn't have anything to do, right? So a couple things that we've been prioritizing is, one, AE self-gen, so setting different targets for account executive to go out, hunt their own business. And then secondly, working with customer success managers more proactively at HyperComply to better support our customers. Because especially if you have a consumption-based pricing model, by making your customers that are already willing to spend money on your solution more successful, and have different ideas around how to better use your solution, that's going to ultimately increase revenue as well. So those are some of the specific things that we're doing today.
Awesome. I think you brought up two really interesting things, Ryan. One is pilots, which I think the idea of taking your offering and making it a little bit more bite-sized to get that easy yes for the entry point is a really great method right now to get people, if there's a small hesitation, to get them to say yes. I think also looking at expansion is really important and interesting. And I'm curious, Allie, how much does your team get involved with the expansion motion, if at all? Or are you focused entirely on new business, and where do you balance those?
Yeah, so we do have some growth. Account executives, their sole purpose is to reach out to our current customers. They'll have like a set of list of accounts that they're to reach out to, and they'll look at their account, like what is their current use case? What do they have? What could they use based on previous conversations? There's a growth account executive on our team named James, who's doing a fantastic job. He's grown like 2 accounts by like more than 10x like last month. Like he's doing so well. He's on the team just above my segment. And then on my team, because again, our companies are smaller, our team is right now just reaching out to customers that haven't been spoken to in a while. There's been some changes internally, and really just introducing themselves and just analyzing, you know, you have this many users, you have 5 more sales reps on your team. Like, let's get folks more usage out of it, and just slowly growing the account bit by bit, because of, again, like the market folks in our segment aren't as amenable to drop like 5-figure, 6-figure digits here. So they'll just work on slowly growing the account by just keeping up that relationship and helping them out where needed.
Excellent. We've talked a lot about, you know, the very manual, relationship-driven revenue motions, which I think is probably folks' primary focus when they think of sales teams and driving sales efficiency. But right now, I know a lot of folks in sales and beyond are looking at tools and ways that they can use new tools or automate some of their processes to help their team be more efficient overall. So I'm curious to hear from each of you, you know, what tools are the must-haves in your sales stack that you couldn't live without? And are there any new things that you are trying out right now to help your teams be more efficient across the board? Ryan, you wanna kick it off?
Yeah, I'd say that's tough. I like a lot of tools. I would say Gong is one of the number one tools that we utilize, just because it helps you understand the evolving dynamics of what's going on with your customers from a leadership lens. When you're not able to be on every single call and understand from a ground floor what's going on, why deals are slipping, why deals are going on budget freezes, how we're currently solving those problems for our customers versus how we could be. the tool that I look to most often is Gong. From a pipeline perspective, of course, Vidyard is an incredible tool to use. And then also SalesLoft is something that we've been able to drive efficiency gains, not just from a prospecting perspective, but we're starting to now make cadences for expansion revenue. We're starting to make cadences now for when a new customer comes on board with us to ensure that we're keeping in touch with them and that we're not letting that fall off the radar because we're busy with X, Y, Z things, and that it's not just all on customer success. So we're starting to use SalesLoft almost as like a task automation tool rather than just a prospecting tool as well. So those are some of the things that we're doing that have really helped.
Awesome. Allie,
I
I
would
hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Like SalesLoft, to Ryan's point, it's like an automated task tool essentially for upsells, for welcoming customers. Put generic Vidyard videos in there. You don't need to make a video every time. Obviously, Vidyard, even if I didn't work here, I would use Vidyard every day, all day. And then any software that can help you identify like engaged accounts that are more likely to convert when you're doing your prospecting. So for us, we use Demandbase and Looker because we are a product growth led organization. With Looker, we can see current free usage and who we should be reaching out to. And then Demandbase sort of qualifies all the accounts, our marketing qualified accounts for us to reach out to. That way it just maximizes our team's time when they are personalizing their outreach and reaching out to the accounts that they want to in order to book their meetings.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like the product triggers, if you have access to that as an organization, some go-to-market strategies won't have that inherently built in, but a lot, especially nowadays, are evolving to that. One thing that I'm working with our head of product at HyperComply to do is create email notifications and triggers for when clients are reaching certain success points of using our product, whether that's like adding a few questionnaires at one time into HyperComply or having a surge of questionnaires. We're starting to think about what would make sense and implement that, because it's hard to go through every single account and be like, okay, like what is happening when you have hundreds, if not thousands of customers? It gets to be unscalable. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out, Ryan, that so many teams have such opportunity to build out those triggers, first of all, if they don't exist, and then work on optimizing them over time. I think that's a great area of collaboration across sales, marketing, and product to come together and say, what are those critical moments in our customer's journey? How do we identify them? And how do we drive even more people to get there early on in their usage? And when you can tap into that, it feels less like sales coming out and asking for the upsell and more about enablement of giving people what they are already using and what they want more of. Super important. Let's see, I'm going to ask one or two more questions and then we'll move into Q&A session. So folks joining in, if you have questions that you have been eager to ask, the chat is open. You can feel free to start dropping them in there. But before we get to that, I also wanted to talk a little bit about incentives. Allie, I think you mentioned pretty early on in our conversation that you like to put your team first and foremost and help think through their compensation and make sure that they are treated well on your team and at your company. I'm curious, in the current market, how you think about incentives for your team and if you've had to make any changes there in the past quarter or so.
Probably the start of our quarter, like this business just made like a small tweak in terms of like their commission and incentives, but essentially rewards the people who are hitting 70% or more, obviously, of their target. But I just do my own incentives as well. So I just onboarded like 3 new reps, and as soon as someone closes their first deal, like I always send them a gift. Like I don't expense it, like I send it from myself. And then because we have such a focus on outbound and self-gen, luckily we do have Demandbase, so we can identify who these accounts are. Just rewarding people for like their weekly efforts to promote that behavior, because it gets taxing, and especially as an account executive, it's a lot to balance doing outbound, taking your inbound demos and managing your pipeline. So whether that's typically like a gift card of their choosing, and even calling out like who these winners are, like when I was selling, I was very ego driven. I just wanted everyone to know I was doing super well. So even just calling out in our team meetings, like, this person's doing really well here, like, congratulations. But like, also like, everyone else, like, are you gonna, like, because everyone's competitive, like, what are you going to beat them next week? Like, who's going to win? So just keeping that morale and just celebrating the small wins too. To Ryan's point, in sales, you lose all the time. So whether that's like someone had a really great talk track in a demo, sharing that with the team, or calling out, like, someone just sent like 60 personalized videos this week, and just promoting that behavior. But really, I just send gifts on like a weekly basis for right now.
I love that. I love hearing that you're rewarding both milestones, like closing that first sale or hitting a quota threshold, as well as the behavioral based actions like great talk tracks or a certain number of outreaches in a week. I think that's a really nice balance that it sounds like you've got in your team. Ryan, how are you thinking about incentives right now across your team?
Yeah, I think it's quite similar. I think we need to shift. Like, we shifted compensation from only being compensated on new logo ARR generated to both expansion as a part of that shift overall for more utilization of our account executive team. However, some of the more fun things that we've done is do something called, I think I've done this every year that I've been a leader. So it's not just in this market, but something called the July Jamboree, which essentially is, I think, Ali, you've been in the July Jamboree too. But essentially what we do is we have everybody pick a gift that they would like to win, up to $1,000 of value. So some people pick Apple Watches, TVs, mountain bikes. There's been some weird things on there too. Who knows? And then everybody will have a week to pick that at the start of the month. And then the second week, everybody guesses who each person picked for the prize, for a chance to win a certain amount of tickets, like let's say 2 tickets. And then there's different ways to earn more tickets. So whether that's doing some of the early indicators, some of the milestone metrics, like working 150 prospects into your cadences, or some of the things that we're trying to drive, like velocity in our deals. You close a deal that got created in month, you get 5 tickets. So it's like almost a big boost there. And then at the end, we go through and use this baby cup of myself in a little bar, and we pick the winner and draw the name. And then whoever wins gets their prize bought for them on HyperComply. So just fun stuff like that. It takes the pressure off of hitting target all the time, because that's still there. And the pressure is 100% there, just like it is for me, for everybody. But trying to make a little bit of fun out of it too.
I love that. I didn't know we were going to get a July Jamboree show and tell worked in here. That was great. Thank you, Ryan. All right, let's move into Q&A. The chat should be open. Feel free if you have questions about sales efficiency, being a sales leader, running sales organizations, whatever you want to know, drop them into the chat and we'll be reading through them. We did get a good number of questions folks submitted early as they were registering. So I will kick off with those and we'll see what else comes through. But one question that we got that I thought was interesting, since we're talking about incentives and managing the team, somebody asked, how do you track skill development among your team? Which is so important as you're building and growing a sales org. You're going to have folks who come in with all different levels and different, backgrounds and experiences. So I'd love to hear from each of you how you track, well, first, how you identify skills that need to be developed, and then how do you track those skills as your team is working on them? Ali, you are unmuted. You want to go first?
Really good question. So similar tools to like Gong, like call coaching tools are really helpful. I haven't quite mastered Gong yet, but just finding your own way to make numbers or make a skill that's like subjective, like objective with numbers. So Ryan used to call coach with me all the time, and I do something similar with my reps now. So I just have like a scorecard. We can pretty much do everything in one call on my team, like disco demo pricing. There's certain things that you need to hit in order that everyone hits. Our successful reps continuously do in order to see success. So based off of what that is, like that's how I built my scorecard in 3 sections. Even honestly, proposals. Now I have a proposal scorecard as well. Like I've seen some proposals from early stages from my team where I was like, oh, this makes sense why the customer didn't buy. This is how we'll work on it together. So making sure you have some sort of scoring system and staying like consistent with that scoring system as well. And then after like coaching my team like every week individually, and then we can see how they're improving in their disco through like based on a number, but then also referring back to the notes, like, did you focus on these 2 key takeaways that we talked about? And looking at the scorecard, you did. Now here's another area that we need to improve on.
I'm curious, what kinds of things were in those proposals that jumped out at you? What is a bad proposal?
Basically just having it too generic. So like here's Vidyard is proven to help customers book 4x more meetings, but maybe that's not like the use case that they actually discuss. So like having notes that specifically relate to what they want to achieve. And then also when I sold, this would help me, whatever the risk was in the deal, I would include information on that, whether it's adoption or they're evaluating another competitor. So making sure I have quick points for my champion to refer to, so they can take that back to their CEO, to the board, and just quickly reference it with those points or through a video. And there could be multiple risks as well. Could be competitor, price, adoption,
Sure.
Everything. So that's typically what I look for, making sure they're calling out the risk when they do their follow-ups.
Great. Ryan, how are you handling skills development on your team?
Yeah, so I like to categorize skills based on outcomes, kind of like what Ali mentioned, something that's a little bit more quantifiable. I feel like sales leaders love things that are quantifiable. And what I do is categorize like for example, prospecting effort is a skill. Prospecting conversion is a skill. So like what you're getting out of it, close rate, and then average order value, because those let you know based on someone and the measurements that we put to each, the criteria that we put to each, where do they have the biggest area for improvement that could automatically improve everything that follows after it. So if someone's struggling with how much prospecting effort that they're putting in because they don't know how to use the tools efficiently, they're not enabled on that effectively, then if we enable them on that effectively, now, even if their conversion rate was 2% and they double the amount of prospects they're working, they're going to double the amount of meetings. Right. And then if they're doing a lot of effort, but not converting, again, if we fix that next bottleneck, the whole funnel improves. So really prioritizing skill development from the top of the funnel first, and then working backwards. And then making sure that we're documenting on an individual level, but then also looking for team-wide trends. So there's some folks on my team that we're working with effectively getting next steps after first calls, after someone pushes back. How do you show someone the benefit of actually booking another time with you? When their first reaction is like, oh no, I don't need an extra time. There are different tactics that we can deploy to actually have them see value in that next meeting. Whereas there's other folks that may need to pull out more risk, to Ali's point in deals, where they need to ask the hard questions like, hey, you sound super excited about this, but why would your company not move forward with this? That's a great thing to put in your follow-up, to start thinking about with your leadership around how you can mitigate that risk. And you'll notice that each person will have different skills that would be most impactful for you to develop over time. And the more mature your organization, the easier it is to look at those trends. But there'll also be common themes with your team. So then focusing on individual coaching sessions where you're focusing on those individual aspects of skills, but then also having like more group enablement where you're focusing on things that the entire team is struggling with.
That's great. I love that both of you pointed out like hard frameworks that you use that sound like they're documented, they're shared with the team. I think so often it's easy to skip that step and say, well, you're a salesperson. It's obvious the skills that you should have. You should be good at selling. But if you don't take the time to write it down and show it to your team and talk with them about it on a regular basis, it doesn't stick and land the same way. So I love that both of you highlighted that as part of the process you're using with your teams.
Yeah, one thing I'll call out quickly as well on that is it's tough to do it consistently, right? Like it's easy to say to do it, but like it's another thing to commit to doing it. So I even do it for myself. So I have a weekly leadership focus sheet that myself and one of the team leads here at HyperComply fill out, that we track what are the key things that I should be doing every week, such as reviewing 6 calls, such as doing X, Y, and Z. And am I doing it? Because there's some weeks I don't do it. But then I have to fill it out and I'm like, okay, I need to get back on track. I need to reprioritize my calendar. Even this morning, I had a couple of meetings and I deleted them because I was like, hey, I didn't review enough calls last week. I need to make sure I'm hitting that this week.
Yeah, totally. That accountability, even if it's just with one other person, so important. That'll make you feel like you have to come through for them. Another question we got is about metrics. I know we've talked a little bit about measurement and metrics, but this person wants to know what measurements or what metrics are you looking at on your team right now? And are they the same as they were before the current market conditions? Have you changed all the metrics that matter most for your team?
I think the biggest one for us is just like the outbound metrics. Basically, one of my goals is to increase my team's like efficiency as a whole in terms of converting to a meeting. So essentially, I want them to work less prospects in order to hit their 2 to 3 meetings on a weekly basis. Whereas before, again, like newish manager, I was just focused on like booking the meetings in general. I don't really care how you get there. But just given there is still work involved in terms of finding the right accounts and finding the right people. So just looking to make it as easy as possible for folks. So with that conversion rate as a team, like what messaging is working best as a team, what subject lines are working best, what videos are working best. And then from those conversions, from those meetings, that's where I can like have more insight on what's happening afterwards as well.
I'm curious, do you have a goal in mind for what that conversion rate should be?
I want it to be 6%. Right now we're at like 5.4 as a team, which isn't bad, but I want it.
And that's outbound to booking is the conversion rate?
Yeah.
Nice.
So like the amount of leads work to booking a meeting. Like as a team, I think on average, some people can work like 30 leads and book a meeting. Some people need to takes a lot more, but on average, it's like 130 or something like or around that number.
Got it. Ryan, what about you? What kind of metrics is your team focused on right now?
I would say the biggest ones are the metrics that are in our control, right? I think in a time that's a little bit more, not easy, but kind of easier, right? Like it's important to look at every metric and look at the bottlenecks of each. But some of those metrics are more in your control versus others, such as like new prospects worked, for example, the conversion rate of it, close rates, average order value, really focusing on those rather than sometimes the revenue outcome, because the revenue outcome can sometimes not be there. But then you look at the underlying metrics and it's like, hold on, they have a 30% close rate. They're doing everything right based on what I'd want, but the revenue outcome's not there. Well, maybe all the deals just slipped. Maybe X happened. Maybe Y happened due to the economic times. So making sure that you're constantly gut checking with, hey, what's the end all be all metric, which is revenue,
Sure.
with the metrics that are in the controllables, and ensuring that you're not just skewing to the easy metric to look at, which is the dashboard, and ensuring that you're educating yourself with, okay, what are the things that this person's actually doing? And that can also give you an understanding whether to be concerned or not as well. So that's something that we're paying attention to.
Great. Yeah, I think you're totally right, Ryan, when you can zoom in a little bit on other metrics other than the ultimate revenue, you can figure out what is fixable, right? Like, is this something that we can influence, or is this actually outside of our control? And how could we go about optimizing that? Super helpful practice to go through on a regular basis. Anyway, let's see, I've got one more audience question here. And this is such a stereotypical sales question. I love it so much. How do you know when you should be more aggressive closing the deal? which right now there's a lot of objections. I'm sure that your teams are coming up against. They're hearing a lot about budgets, pricing sensitivity. How do you know when you should throttle and push and go for it versus when you should back off and try to build a more long-term relationship with that customer?
I think what I try to tell my team as well is like, we're obviously closing deals, but we're helping our customers. So you're seeking to understand whether they're ready to move forward or not. Like some prospects that give you those happy ears and they're like, yeah, like, you really think they're going to move forward. Just no matter what situation you're in, if you're not sure if they want to move forward, just ask, hey, are you ready to move forward? If yes, awesome. If no, they'll tell you why. And you shouldn't have to be like pushy, for lack of a better term, if you just like seek to understand. And if they're not ready, so ask those clarifying questions as to why they might not be ready. And then eventually some of the reasons they give you might not be that valid. So you can handle that objection and turn it around. And that's exactly why you should actually move forward with a year contract here at Vidyard. So I don't know if that exactly answers the question, but just letting go of closing the deal, because that's going to come regardless, and just move forward with like helping and seeking to understand.
I love it. I like reframing that. I think that is super important. No customer likes to be aggressively sold to, right? Like sometimes they're ready to move forward, sometimes they're not, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Shifting that focus to be the customer's point of view is best long-term for a brand.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Like a phrase I always like to say is like, so I can be as helpful as possible. You have this problem. How else are you going to solve it if you don't move forward with Vidyard? Like, what are you going to do in the meantime?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Well, why Vidyard?
Ryan, what about you? How do you balance the, forward momentum and keeping things on track with wanting to be supportive and help your customers?
First off, I love the question that Ali just recommended, and we might steal that here. And then I think Ali has it right on the money. I think it's not about selling them or like forcing someone to buy, right? It's like if you have a product that's worth selling, which I hope everybody does, you're helping them solve a problem, right? And I think if you shift from trying to get them to buy to trying to seek full alignment with them by asking some of the tougher questions, hey, like, you're leaning into this, like, is this something that you'd like to move forward with today? Not in a way to like pressure them to buy, but because it seems like we can help them solve their problem and that they see that. So why not just ask the question? Because most sales start with when they say no for the first time, right? As soon as they say no for the first time, then you get the beautiful question, the opportunity to ask the beautiful question, why, right? Like, hey, totally understand. I'm here to help you with this process, whether you move forward with HyperComply or not. Like, do you mind me asking just like why this isn't like a right time for you? Then you're going to understand what's actually happening and be able to work with that and overcome some of those problems. And there's going to be times when you tell the customer, hey, everything you're telling me right now means that you shouldn't buy our product. And you should be super confident to say that to someone, because then what's going to happen is when they hear someone else is having the problem that you were talking about with them, they're going to recommend them to you as a sales rep, not HyperComply or Vidyard as a company, but you as a sales rep, because they're going to have so much conviction and trust that you're going to treat them, their friends, their colleagues, their acquaintances like an actual person, not someone that they're going to get $1,000 commission from.
100%. Thank you for adding that, Ryan. Thank you both for taking time out of your days to talk us through this. I know it is a really interesting, challenging, hard, and fun time to be in tech sales right now. And there are a lot of questions and problems that people are facing. So thank you for sharing a bit of your insights and recommendations with us. I appreciate your time. And thank you to everyone who tuned in and joined. We are glad to have you and hope you can join us again for future events.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.